Welcome back to Winning the Division, episode number 52. I am your co-host, Ryan Smith. Alongside me, former NFL tight end, Bucks, Titans, Raiders, Ben Troupe with us as well, as you know. And our guest today, he is Broncos flagship reporter, Broncos insider, KOA Colorado. You know him at Allbright NFL on X or Twitter, wherever you'd like to call it those days. From Denver, Colorado. Let's welcome to the podcast, Benjamin Allbright. Benjamin, how's it going, buddy?
Going well. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure. I know you're on Mountain Time, so you're preparing some dinner, so we'll try to not keep you too long. Try to keep your appetite from getting all wild on us. So it's so good to have you on. Let's just start out with your kind of storyline, expectations. I want to start here for 2025, Broncos style out there in Denver. What is some of the media, what some of the people out there saying about this Denver Broncos squad, who not only was competitive in the AFC West last year, but went to the playoffs under Sean Payton and rookie quarterback Bo Nix in year number one?
Yeah, I think there's certainly a cautious optimism here that there's an upward trajectory with this football team and with Bo Nix. Obviously they needed a win over the Chiefs backups in week 18 in order to sneak in the playoffs, but they still made it, and that's the first time they've been back to the playoffs since that Super Bowl win. So, I think for Broncos fans, a franchise not used to being outside the playoffs, especially for that lengthy amount of time, I think there's a cautious optimism with this football team. The defense is very good. The offense is the question mark. Bo Nix, what's he going to be like with defensive coordinators getting a full year of tape and an offseason to study it on him? These weapons, is this enough in terms of weapons to, as an offense to be able to execute enough and get enough points in a division that's really, really tough, at least from the coaching pedigree standpoint. So I think fans are excited. I think they're cautiously optimistic, and I think they want to believe in Bo Nix.
Benjamin, speaking of those weapons, obviously you get a guy like Evan Ingram in the offseason. No, he's not the player he used to be, but it's still a head scratcher why he's not a Jacksonville Jaguar, because of what he did his first year there. Obviously injuries, but what can a Sean Payton do? He's not Jimmy Graham, but he has Jimmy Graham type ability. What can Evan Ingram look to be in the offense with Sean Payton, who definitely loves to have, guys like him, tight ends that, definitely move the chains?
Yeah, Sean Payton has had 4 different All-Pro seasons out of the tight end position as a head coach with 3 different players. Jimmy Graham, who you mentioned, Jeremy Shockey, who was the other one? Dave Graham, maybe? Or was it Ben Coates? Maybe it was Ben Coates. It was one of the guys he had down there in New Orleans. And so he's had a few All-Pro seasons, and he gets them out of the tight end position. The target distribution in the pass game tends to go to that X-ride receiver on the slant, and then you've got the tight end they tend to get to, and then they tend to get to the running back a lot. The other guys are just complementary. You ever look at that, like the backside Z doesn't get as many targets, but he'll get the deep shots, and that'll be the Marvin Mims type stuff. But you mentioned Evan Ingram, and he's not really an inline guy, but as an off the line Y or a guy you can flex out as maybe a heavy slot. I think he offers a lot. He's too big for corners to cover him, and he's too fast for linebackers still. Even at his age, he's still fast for most linebackers, and so I think it gives you a little bit of advantage. And I think that's something they've lacked, because last year you had guys like Adam Troutman back there, and Adam Troutman's a fine inline blocker and all that, but he's not really much of a dynamic weapon in the pass game. And so what you'll get is you'll get better spacing with the tight end. As you well know, you get a tight end that can stretch the seam like that. Now all of a sudden you get better spacing out of that, and that'll free guys up. That'll free Cortland Sutton up off the slant. That'll free Devon Vele on that square in, and and you can't really sit back there in too high. So as soon as you rotate to the middle of the field and you're showing 1 or 3, then you're hitting that Z on the bang 9 on the backside there. And we saw how successful that can be. I think you go back and look at the Bengals tape. Marvin Mims housed a couple of those. So that's really what this Sean Payton offense is. It's designed to space you horizontally and vertically, and a guy like Ingram, I think, adds to that better than a guy like, for instance, Troutman, who they had last year.
And I actually want to go really quickly, if I can, to former Broncos coach who's now on another team, because me and Ben and I are NFC South guys, and I don't know if you did any research before coming on here. So I'm in North Carolina, Panthers. Jero Avero is defensive coordinator here in Carolina. He was obviously out there with Sean Payton, but prior to Sean Payton in Denver. Almost was kept on at defensive coordinator. For what you can tell us anyway, two-part question. Number one, thoughts on Jero Avero when he was in Denver, kind of his coaching style as a whole from afar here in Carolina, and what you saw in Denver. And then part two, Denver and Carolina played last year, obviously. And so thoughts on Bryce Young down the stretch, and what do you think he can become here in 2025?
Well, let me start with Bryce Young. I thought the most beneficial thing to happen in his career was getting sat down for a minute. Exhale, see the thing from the sidelines. You've been drinking through a fire hose. Step back for a second, see the thing in action, and let it all click and connect. It looked like it did. I mean, it really did. The back half of the season, it started to look like it was coming together for him. And so, maybe you got something there. Well, time will tell. I mean, this season, we'll kind of see what the adjustments are. But Canales, I've known Dave since Dave was back there and first started in Seattle. Canales is a smart guy. He really is. And he does his best to empower players, does his best to put guys in the best position they can to succeed. And, I think he knew Bryce needed to sit down for a second. Hey, look, this isn't, a demotion. This is sitting you down for a second. I'm going to show you what a veteran who's been in the league a decade and a half can do in absorbing this concept, and then I want you to kind of pick up on that, and he did. As far as Jero Avero goes, he's a sharp guy. That was probably the signature hire of the Nathaniel Hackett debacle here in Denver. Avero and Hackett were together back in Tampa as quality control guys way back in the day under John, and so Avero's a smart guy. He's not a screamer in your face. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bill Kolar, but Kolar was a guy that a defensive line coach, famous here in Denver for the epithets and everything else that he put out there. He was a welcome relief from Vic Fangio. Fangio's very curmudgeonly, old school throwback. Avero tries to be a lot more modern with the technique. What he ran when he was here in Denver was kind of a variant of what Fangio ran. You saw that tight front, and then you saw a lot of cover four, based stuff, and they'd switch off that, but that was the base defense that they ran. Odd front, tight front, and then you'd have the cover four stuff, and they'd move it around. Occasionally, he'd run zeros to try to throw you off. But the idea in the Fangio defense is send the least amount of people I need to at the quarterback, drop everybody else back as long as I'm getting pressure. And Avero really kind of built off that. He threw a couple more blitzes in there than Fangio did, but he really it was a continuity to what Fangio ran that he was running. What he's running out there in Carolina looks a little bit different than what he was running here. I think he's just adapting to his personnel. Obviously, you saw him bring a couple of former guys he worked with here in Denver out there. You got Josie out there, at the linebacker, not the most athletic guy, but a very smart, instinctive guy. And I think if you're intelligent and you have a high football IQ, you succeed with what Avero does. You don't have to be the world's greatest athlete, but you do have to have that high football IQ and understand instinctively where you need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of guys who you talk about, you could build around. I talked about Evan Ingram, obviously. Smitty talked about, Bo Nix, first got on. Patrick Surtain II. This guy comes out, he has all the intangibles. No one saw him becoming this. And if they did, they didn't see it happening this fast. You around him, you get, you spoken to him. What type of individual is it? Because, if you're a receiver, I've never seen a cornerback that big and that patient at the line. He doesn't go. I know everybody wants to go back to when Devonta Smith was with the Raiders saying he ain't there yet. Well, he's there now. And then some. What is Pat Surtain II like for people who only get to know his game, don't really know him as an individual?
Oh, hungry learner, dude. Like one of those guys. Obviously you could tell the DNA with his dad, and all that. You could tell the DNA and all that kind of stuff. But he's a better player than his daddy was. And that's tough to say because his dad was a really good player. He's a hungry football learner. He wants to not just know what he's supposed to do, but he wants to know what the whole secondary is supposed to be doing in that in situations. And Justin Simmons, who's a very intelligent player, called him one of the smartest guys he's ever been around. In terms of football and want to soak up everything and just understand not just what I'm supposed to do, but why I'm supposed to do it. And I think that's what makes him good at what he does. He got humiliated by Devontae Adams on that one play, that touchdown when Adams was with the Raiders. And he got humiliated on that one play. And that's really over his career, the one embarrassing play that he's led up. And he came back with kind of a renewed vengeance, in terms of, I can't let that happen to me again. I haven't arrived. And so he's humble, hardworking, but really just a voracious learner of football. And I think that's what serves him so well. The interesting thing, and it's so funny to me now to look back on, when he was drafted, I was cheering the selection, but the majority of the fans and media in this market were absolutely ripping George Paton for taking Pat Surtain and passing on Justin Fields at the time. And man, looking back in hindsight now, boy, did George Paton get that one right.
Hey, Smith, I want to jump in real quick before you jump in. I mean,
go ahead.
I know, Benjamin. He asked you about Bo Nix, but Bo Nix is 1 year after Russell Wilson. It just didn't work. And a lot of times people kept saying, man, the most important relationship on the team is that of a head coach and a quarterback. I don't care if the quarterback is an offensive guy. What worked with Bo Nix that just didn't work with Russ?
Well, first of all, it's personalities. I mean, Sean and Russ, that was doomed from the get-go. I mean, we knew that wasn't going to work. Part of it's the personalities. I mean, Russ is so, and this is the term I used. He's almost toxically positive. Right? He's positive to the point that it strains credulity. When they were losing, they were down, 3-4 touchdowns in Detroit, and he's sitting there on the sideline, just got to believe, fellas, got to believe. Buddy, there's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. There ain't all the belief in the world ain't going to win this football game. I'm sorry. And so that's sort of the thing is like, Russ comes across as a walking cliche sometimes, like I don't think he understands, like, that's what's worked for him his whole career. Fine, good. And he's had a great career. Don't get me wrong. But there comes a point where, you've got to put up in those situations. And he wasn't quite putting up at the same rate that he used to back in Seattle. The other part of this is, offensively, conceptually, what Russ does and what he's great at and still, fairly good at or great at, is almost the opposite of what Sean Payton does. Sean Payton's offense it's a West Coast throwback. It's kind of that Gulf Coast offense, a lot of in-breaking stuff between the numbers. And Russ is at his best throwing deep, escaping out the back door and throwing deep or going to the sidelines outside the numbers on out-breaking routes and putting the ball where only his receiver can get it. And so the skill set that Russell Wilson had didn't really match up with the offense Sean Payton wanted to run. And Sean Payton's like, well, this is the offense we're running, so either execute it or are you going to be somewhere else? And naturally, he's somewhere else now. As far as Bo is one of those guys that just fits Sean Payton's mentality. There's some guys have certain personalities that just mesh well with others, and he's kind of got that same personality that Drew Brees had, and they can be boys and do their thing, and and all that kind of stuff. And Bo will challenge Sean a little bit too. Sean likes that. He just the same way Gruden used to like it when Rich Gannon would woof at him on the sideline a little bit about stuff. Sean likes that. He likes that Bo pushed back. Where when Sean was on Russ's backside in that aforementioned Detroit game, Russ just shoved his hands down, put his head down, and kind of nodded and walked off, didn't push back. And so, I think Sean views having a quarterback with a little fire in him is a necessity to the leadership components he wants to instill. And so I just think they just fit better, skill set wise, personality wise, leadership wise. I just think they're better fits for each other.
I was going to go somewhere else, but I'll keep that for my next question. But going back into Sean Payton a little bit more, obviously, like I said earlier in the podcast, both of us are NFC South guys here, Panthers and Falcons. But obviously, Payton coached the enemy down here, the Saints. What is it about Sean Payton that just connects with people? Because he took really, post Hurricane Katrina, he goes in there and takes the Aints and puts the S back on them and makes them the Saints again. And they just do their thing for a long time, 14 years. And then he goes to Denver, and obviously the Russell experiment didn't work out, like you said, but he has Bo Nix. And even just the 1 year he was at, I want to say he was at Fox, the 1 year he was out of coaching, just listening to him on some of those shows that he would go on, it is amazing some of the football knowledge that the guy possesses. I mean, I may not like him from a coaching standpoint against my team, but the guy can coach, and the guy has a brilliant football mind.
Yeah, I mean, I have bones to pick with someone who's coaching, and his personality can be excessively arrogant at times. But what's that saying? The difference between cockiness and confidence is the ability to back it up. And so I think that's part of it. He comes off that Parcells tree, and you ever look, even the Parcells guys that weren't super successful, they all had that high standard of excellence they set right off the bat and held people to, and that's a part of great coaching. Is having that standard of excellence, not letting the standard slip, and so. I think that's part of it. Part of it was, having an underrated quarterback and Drew Brees fall into your lap. That was part of it. The thing, people always say Sean Payton made Drew Brees. Go back and look at Drew Brees when he was in San Diego. He's doing the same thing in a Marty Schottenheimer offense. He just wasn't allowed to throw the ball 500 times, a season. He was throwing the ball 300 times a year. So he was doing the same things. Drew Brees was always Drew Brees. It was just a question of somebody letting him, loose and letting him be the full Drew Brees. And so, I think it was part of it. Although we saw Sean Payton win games with guys like Teddy Bridgewater and Jameis and Taysom Hill and whatnot. I think his offense, it's not. And there are complications to it, but it's just an offense that tries to offer a solution for everything, right? And that, to me, I find that to be a simple concept, even if it is structurally a little more complicated. And if you have a solution for everything, you look like a genius all the time because all you have to do as a player is go out and execute, right? So I think that's really the thing, is that Sean Payton's coaching philosophy is, hey, look, we're on offense. The game is tilted towards offense. We offer something that provides a solution to everything. And if you go out and execute, we're always gonna get a completion. We're matriculating the ball. We're moving it forward. We're staying ahead of schedule. And we're scoring points. You wake up one day and you find yourself in the end zone scoring points. So, I think that's really it. Is a combination of the philosophically comes off the Parcells tree, and it's a standard of excellence. And then from a football IQ X's and O's standpoint, the offense doesn't have situations where you throw up your hand and say, I don't know what we're going to do here, fellas. It's got a solution for something. And so that's where it is. Do I think he gets away from the run too quickly? Yes. Do I think he passes, set up the pass? Yes. But there are my bones to pick with it, or why I'm sitting here, talking on this and not, and not out there coaching. I think he is a very intelligent football guy, and he strives to not be predictable to the point where he almost becomes predictably unpredictable. But I think that having an idea of what you want to do, being able to vary it from game to game, and finding ways to say to your players, hey, look, here's this is it. There's a solution in here. One of these things is going to be open. You just got to find it and go from there. I think that makes for winning football in the end.
And that being said, I mean, obviously we know that the beast of, the almost evil empire in the National Football League is in the AFC West. They Kansas City. We give them all the credit in the world. Everybody seems to love Justin Herbert no matter what he does or doesn't do. This is going to be the year. Obviously, Harbaugh is back in the National Football League. I think the Raiders are still a couple of seasons away when you got to rebuild the culture. But Bo Nix went to the playoffs last year as a rookie. Where is this Denver Bronco team as it pertains to the AFC West and the AFC? Because you can build off a guy who just came in the playoffs, whether it was the B team, C team at the last game of the year. Where is Denver as far as the AFC West, and where do they stack up? Because I think the AFC is miles ahead of the NFC right now as far as like talent top to bottom.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree. The AFC is much, much stronger than the NFC at this point. And I mean, you got great, even you got stacked divisions where you can't figure it out. We're talking about the AFC North, the AFC West. I think you're right with the Raiders. I mean, Pete Carroll's not gonna be a pushover like some of those other coaches. He's going to get the culture right. It's just a question of how many years it's going to take to get there. But they got weapons on offense already, and they, Crosby on defense is a record by himself. They just got to get more personnel in there and get that thing established. You look at the Chargers and the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs are tops till somebody dethrones them. Right? You can't knock them down until somebody knocks them off. Broncos came close last year. If it hadn't been for that blocked field goal there at Arrowhead, they would have beat them. So, that's one of those things where I think Denver looks back at that and the streak that they've got losing at Arrowhead for however many years, and I think that there's some regret on that. The Broncos, I think they're flirt with a wild card this year. I don't think they're ready to quite take the division yet. If everything bounces their way and they stay healthy, I think that they could be in a fight for it. But, Kansas City, they had a couple of games last year that were kind of easy where they got backup quarterbacks and that kind of stuff. But on the flip side of that, they were missing a lot of their offensive talent, Rashee Rice and all that kind of stuff. Now you've got all those guys back and healthy. They're going to be tough. Kansas City's always going to be tough. Anytime you got Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, that's a tough combination just in and of itself. The Chargers, that you don't want to play the Chargers and have a tough opponent the week after. I'll say that they play gritty, smash mouth, physical football, and so that's really kind of the thing. Whatever you think of them, however you think of them, and I look at them and I say, all right, well, they brought Mike Williams back. He's not the same guy he used to be. The tight end position, you drafted Gadsden Jr. And you got Disley. That's a little bit of something. Lad McConkey's a monster, but they really don't have much else. Quentin Johnson out there looking like he's running down the field trying to catch the ball between two frying pans. It's ridiculous. But if they just had the receiving talent around him there, they've rebuilt that offensive line and that run game looks solid. So they're going to be a tough matchup. I don't know if they win the division, but they'll be flirting with a wild card as well. And then you look around the AFC, man, you got so many tough teams. Baltimore, Cincinnati doesn't have a defense, but that offense is capable of scoring 40, 45 a game. Pittsburgh's always Pittsburgh, always in the thick of things. You look over in the East and you got Buffalo over there. You got a motivated Miami team. They may or may not be any good, but they're motivated because they're going to get that coaching staff front office get blown out. They don't make the playoffs. Patriots defense was good. They just got to develop an offense. I don't think much of the Jets this year, but we'll see. And then in the South, you've got a Texas team that probably bounces back. Year two would have the same blocking scheme the entire time, no change-ups to it, where you got the left tackle on an island and everybody else shifting right, and the defense knows it. They sugar the right and then they blitz the left, and you got 2-on-1, and you're gonna win that every time. And that puts CJ Stroud to bind. Jacksonville, I don't know what they're going to be with Liam Cohen, but it's certainly going to be fun to watch with Travis Hunter out there, but he's going to have eyes on that. Tennessee, again, same thing with Cam Ward. I don't know what they are, but it'll be fun to watch. And then the Colts, I think they're better than people think. Steichen's a better coach than people give him credit for. I don't think Anthony Richardson was ready. I just think Daniel Jones will be better for them. If he can limit the turnovers, they'll be at least competitive. So the AFC, it's tough. It's not, the balance of power shifted over the last couple of decades or whatever, where it was NFC tough for a while, and then now it's the AFC tough. It's easier in the NFC right now. And I don't know where the Broncos are, but I think they're probably a wild card team.
That was a nice breakdown for our listeners from a not just Broncos standpoint, but overall AFC, kind of your state on some of those teams going into the season. I've been following you, Ben, for a longer time, so I know some of the connections that you have. So I'll ask you this question because I want to get your opinion. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast here. What do you I want to highlight on two specific teams that you mentioned there, Chargers and Bengals. Chargers, I think Justin Herbert has got to put it all together. At some point, he's got to win a playoff game. At some point, he's got to do it. And then from the Chargers Bengals situation, what do you think about this Shamar Stewart situation and Trey Hendrickson? Is this just the Bengals are going to Bengal, as they say, or is it something deeper within that? Because it's not like other teams don't have these clauses in their contract, and some other teams don't. Some teams do this like the Bengals do, and some teams haven't done it this way. Every team obviously does clauses differently. So thoughts on the Herbert and kind of stepping into his role, I think, this year, and then the Bengals situation.
Yeah, I'll start with the Bengals and I'll work my way backwards. The specific language in Shamar Stewart's deal, that's the problem. And the Bengals are being stubborn about it because the Bengals are stubborn. They're cheap and they're stubborn. And so they're being stubborn about some language they don't need to be stubborn about. It's just the way the language is in that contract. If they would change one word on it, then it would effectively put the contract where Shamar wants it, which is if I get hurt, then this guarantees the money for the next year. It guarantees the money and the way that they have it is the way the phrasing is in there. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. But the way the phrasing is it allows them sort of some wiggle room there. If you get hurt, like with regard to bodily injury and the way it's phrased. And so they're just being stupid and being stubborn there. If they just change that, he'd sign and he'd be in there and that'd be that. They're being cheap with Trey Hendrickson. That's what it is. They spent all that money on the offense, and now what are you going to do? They sold the naming rights to the stadium, made it Paycor just a few years ago because they needed the cash to be able to pay some of these guys. They're not a very cash wealthy team, and so that's sort of one of the problems that they have. I don't know what you do. I mean, you brought in a new defensive coordinator, but they don't have a ton of talent. I mean, I've been calling it the E-fence because it doesn't feel like they're going to be playing any D this year. They might be they might be the best team to score 40 points a game and win 6 games. Over the course of the season. So we'll see how it works out for them. Maybe they surprise me. I like Zach Taylor, but his brother Press was down there in Jacksonville for a little while. I like the Taylor brothers, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you don't have the bodies on defense, you're going to look like the Raiders when all's said and done. Of course, they don't have the bodies on offense either, but we'll see how it is. As far as the other thing you mentioned with Herbert, yeah, you got to win a playoff game at some point. You got to justify the faith in you at some point. I think part of that is the previous coaches they had. I mean, when you had Mike McCoy and Brandon Staley, that was just stupid. They hired the wrong guys. And so they had the wrong guys around him. You look at the offensive lines that he had for most of his career; those lines were terrible. Now they've got a good offensive line. The problem is the skill position players. I mean, you got McConkey, who's a monster, and that run game, the 1-2 punch in the run game with Najee and Omarion Hampton looks like it'll be legit. But yeah, again, Quentin Johnston, here's a name for you. It reminds me of Eddie Kennison. All the speed in the world, but he's got the hands of granite. And so it's one of those things where you're like, all right, man, you got to hang on to the ball, and we got to find somebody who can. Number one job of receivers is to catch a football, and so. I think with Herbert, I think very highly of Justin Herbert. I've seen him live. I get to see him twice a year. I think very highly of him as a quarterback. That said, there comes a point where you got to justify your existence. Even if you've got mediocre skill position players, you got to elevate them as a quarterback. You got to find a way to put the ball out in a way that he can catch it. You got to find a way to put that, to put your team into playoffs and win games. And so that's sort of the thing. You can't have any more of these playoff implosions. So I'm with you on that. It's almost put up or shut up time there.
I mean, we know that Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, one of the face of the NFL, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen is the first ever second-team All-Pro to win the MVP. I've never seen that happen ever in life. But and Joe Burrow. So those are your faces. Who's that second tier? Because we know those are the guys that it's easy. You talk about Bo Nix being the playoff, Jaden Daniels. You talk about what Jared Goff is doing. Who is that next tier of quarterbacks? Because here's my thing. If I'm wrong, Bo Nix is so ahead of schedule that no one wants to talk about it. Right now, he's the better Oregon quarterback than Justin Herbert. Even though Justin Herbert to me is the Matthew Stafford of the AFC. When Matthew Stafford was over there with the Detroit, he's giving you 4,000, 5,000 every year. They're not making the playoffs. Who's that next year? Because I respect what Jaden Daniels did, but between you and me, Benjamin, what Bo Nix did for Denver, a team that hasn't seen the playoffs since they went to the Super Bowl, Sean Payton is the hardest coach to deal with because he knows who he is. All you got to do is ask him. Just ask me who I am, and I'll tell you. Why aren't we talking about Bo Nix enough? Because I believe he is in that second tier of quarterback who, hey, man, while everybody's talking about the mainstays, we got this rookie not named Jaden Daniels who took us to the playoffs, doesn't have a surrounding cast. He got Cortland Sutton. They just added Evan Ingram. Is Bo Nix ready to take that second and be in that second tier of quarterbacks who, hey, man, he's saying, listen, I know my name is Bo, and my daddy went to Auburn, so I went to Auburn. I got the hell out of Auburn, went over there with Dan Lanning, helped me get drafted in the first round, and I went to the playoffs as a rookie. I think I'm good enough to be a part of that second tier, and I mean second tier with as much respect as possible.
Yeah, I think he's on the border of that. I think, you put Herbert in that second tier probably just based on the tools. But again, who else you put in there? The problem with the quarterback group in the NFL right now is you've got the guys who've been the mainstays for the last decade and a half are all starting to wash out a little bit. The Kirk Cousins, the Russell Wilsons, Aaron Rodgers, those kind of guys are getting close to retirement. So we're trying to figure out who that next generation. Mahomes been in the league for 9 years. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but he's been in the league a long time now. And so that's one of those things, like, who is that second tier? I think Bo can get there. This year is really going to be the question. Was last year an aberration or was it who he is? Because I think a lot of people are hesitant to give him the credit I think he deserves because a lot of people are lower on him in the draft run-up process. People were talking about, you certainly talk about Caleb Williams, obviously, but you're talking about Jaden a little bit, and you have the Drake May fans, the J.J. McCarthy, the Michael Penix. He's a 6th quarterback drafted in that draft class, the 6th. And he comes out and plays like the second best, at least in his rookie season. So, I think Bo can. I think the question really is, again, coordinator's got a year's worth of tape on him now, and they got pro tape on him. Not that Oregon stuff that he was running. That you're not running the pros. They get pro tape on him. They got a whole off season to game plan the guy and poke at his weaknesses and see how he responds to that. And I think that's what makes the difference between quarterbacks they're okay and quarterbacks that rise to greatness. Everybody punches and gets counterpunched. It's how you counterpunch those defensive coordinators. And Bo doesn't make a lot of negative plays. Doesn't take sacks. Gets it out quick. Keeps the offense on schedule. The question is, is what he's going to be. Is he going to be a little bit more effective between the numbers? And if he can be effective between the numbers, throwing the football, then the sky's the limit. But most of his stuff last year came off, ripping deep balls people weren't expecting, or spamming that slant to Cortland Sutton. So, I do believe he can work himself into that tier. I'd put him in the middle right now of NFL quarterbacks, probably like 14th, something like that, 13th. But absolutely has the potential to get up there to 8, 6, 7. He's got mobility that he's. I hate to use the cliche white guy term, but he's sneaky athletic. He'll get loose on you if you drop your contain, and we saw that a couple of times last year. So, I think he's got the tools to get there. Not the strongest arm in the world, but certainly the strong enough to make all the throws. And if he can survive how teams counterpunch him this year and figure out, okay, they figured out that I do this. Okay, now I need to do that. Then sky's the limit for him.
I want to mention one other AFC team because I know people are talking to them like the doors are being blown off them. How important is the Miami Dolphins this year? I mean, Tua, he can't stay healthy, obviously, but Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer, the GM there. I mean, it feels like, again, like Herbert, this feels like kind of put up or shut up time this year with them, or they might be looking for answers down there in Miami. If either Tua gets hurt again, or even if he stays healthy, I think they got to go to the playoffs and at least win a game, maybe even two. I mean, you just look at that roster, and with the trade with Jalen Ramsey, Mika Fitzpatrick, Jonnu Smith, I just don't see it in Miami. I am down on Miami by, I think, more than a lot of people are this year. I think you say you don't believe in the Jets. Well, I think the Jets are going to beat Miami.
They might. I think both those teams are not going to be very good. It is put up or shut. They have a mandate. They don't win a playoff game, they're blowing that thing out. They're getting rid of the GM, the coach, the quarterback, and they'll start over. So it's they do have a mandate down there as far as that goes. I've known Mike McDaniel a long time. He used to take dance classes just down the road here in Denver back when he was in high school. He's one of the brightest.
That's right.
Yeah. He's one of the brightest football minds out there, and some of the stuff that he does goes unnoticed because a lot of what he schemes up, comes in the run game. It's not as sexy as a pass game that he does, but he's a brilliant football mind, and his sobriety's really helped him out the last couple of years. But you're at the point now where it's put up or shut up time, man. I mean, it is, and that's sort of been the thing. You had the opportunity, you had the weapons, you got all this kind of stuff. I think they're counting on the Waddle and Hill more than I think you probably should. And then, rolling the dice on the health of Tua the way that they're rolling the dice on that. I mean, that's a hold your breath every time he gets hit. So I don't think much of Miami or the Jets. I think they're probably the bottom of the barrel in the in the AFC. But I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. We'll see. But I'm with you on that. I don't think they're a very good football team, and I think they probably all get blown out at the end of the year.
Sean Payton, as you mentioned earlier, won the Drew Brees sweepstakes. Who knows? I mean, he helped start a dynasty a second dynasty in Alabama because that sent Nick Saban back to college football. Mm-hmm. But have you ever seen anything like Mike Tomlin? Never had a losing season, right? 18, 19 years as a head coach. And he might be the worst winning coach to pick a quarterback. He cannot pick quarterbacks, and he's going to bet the farm on Aaron Rodgers.
I mean, desperation makes fools of us all, right? That's kind of how that goes. They keep trying to, last year they tried to go cheap in an effort to keep the rest of the team together. They knew they had to, they knew they had a TJ Watt thing coming up. They got to pay the defense. They tried to go cheap, and with Russ Wilson and his offsets, and they knew he was going to sign for a veteran minimum. You could trade for Fields. Fields didn't work out early, got benched. They put Russ in there. The offense got better, but it still wasn't where it needed to be. I don't even know if they have the right offensive coordinator. I like Arthur Smith. I don't think him and Aaron Rodgers are a fit. That's going to be interesting about halfway through the season. If they don't have desperation makes fools of us all. It does. Like, that's one of those things. Like, you get desperate, you're like, all right. And that's the thing about Tomlin. Like, you got to win a playoff game, dude. It's been a while. You got to win a playoff. You've had a winning season every year, but that's no longer enough. The standard in Pittsburgh is higher than that. And then fans aren't going to accept that. Ownership is not going to accept that. I don't think they'll fire Tomlin, but I think they wouldn't renew his contract if he doesn't win a football game. He's got till the end of his contract to turn it around, win some playoff games. If he doesn't do that, they're in trouble. And what are they going to do after Aaron Rodgers? Because they got nothing on that roster. Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. Are you kidding me? Skylar Thompson was a guy who couldn't stick around as the third stringer in Miami. It's with all due respect, like, those guys ain't getting it done. And so, they're going to have to figure something out, or they're going to have to be heavily involved in trying to get a quarterback in this coming draft, because Rodgers is a one-year rental, and who knows how reliable that's going to be.
As we wind down here, last two from me, I'm going to go to the NFC side, and then we'll go big picture for my last question. On the NFC side, it's funny. Obviously, we mentioned the NFC South already, so I'm going to go elsewhere. So the two teams that I cannot figure out on the NFC side, and maybe you can shed some light for me here, the Arizona Cardinals, Kyler Murray, I think I've said this to whoever will listen, he is number one in the NFL this year when it comes to he needs something to happen this year. I think he's the most under pressure quarterback in the entire football league, I think, this year, or this might be very well be his last year in Arizona. And then the other team that is quietly doing things that I don't think we're talking about enough is the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, the NFC West, we're expecting the Rams to do their thing, which they very well might. And then San Francisco's schedule is as easy as some sliced bread. I think they're going to go to 14-3, most people think, which, they very well might. But the Seattle is just out there minding their own business. Cooper Kupp, Sam Darnold. I know Cooper Kupp wasn't what he once was. Kenneth Walker. Mike McDonald, very, very respected head football coach. What are your thoughts on Seattle and Arizona in that NFC West this year?
Well, I'm probably on the opposite end of the spectrum on those two. I think Arizona. Last year I said Washington was my sleeper team, and we saw what they did. This year Arizona's my sleeper team. What they've been doing and building up the problem with Arizona has been on defense. They haven't had the bodies, and they've been trying to build that thing up. They're there now. That defense is going to be obscene this year. That defense is, if it's healthy, is going to be very good. And Nick Rallis, who is the defensive coordinator there, that guy's the Sean McVay of defense. He has an eidetic memory. He remembers everything. Great coach. He's going to get a head coaching job here sooner than later. He's real young, but he's going to get a head coaching job here sooner than later. I believe that Arizona is going to be a very competitive football team, could even win the division this year. I think you're going to see some of these other teams take a step back. Seattle, I don't know what they're doing. Bringing little Kubiak out there was fine. He was, that offense was good for 2 games last year, and then all of a sudden it evaporated with the Saints and Derek Carr and all that. I don't trading Geno for Sam Darnold. That's a downgrade to me. Darnold needs a great offensive line to be able to work. That's sort of his thing, and that's the one thing Seattle does not have. Even putting Kupp out there, they don't have a great offensive line. I love what Mike's doing on defense. I loved what he did at Baltimore. Love what he's doing there in Seattle on defense. The offensive side of the ball, they hired the wrong coordinator last year at Grubb, and I don't believe they necessarily hired the right coordinator this year in Kubiak either. I think you needed somebody with a little bit more seasoning than him. So we'll see. I could be wrong on that. But I'll tell you this: Arizona's win total for the year is 8.5, and I hammered the over with my own money on that. So take that for what you will.
Benjamin, I don't know if this is gonna happen. And this is my far out there take. I mean, I'm gonna try to start having these more often. I respect what Saquon Barkley did last year, but no one's talking about how close Derrick Henry got to another 2,000-yard season. If any, Saquon is a freaking mutant. We get it. He's a mutant. We've never seen that like him. If Derrick Henry, if they feature him, because they got a couple more years with him. If they feature him this year, could you see him getting another 2,000 yards at his age? Because don't nobody really want to tackle him second half of the season or second half of games. Why are we not talking about Derrick Henry more and what he's doing this big, this strong? I won't call him elusive, but why ain't nobody talking about what he's doing at this age and stage of his career?
I think it's because we've gotten used to the production. You get used to it, and then you don't think about it as being as stellar as it is. But Derrick Henry, yeah, he was a beast last year. Got to see it up close and personal against the Broncos. The thing about Derrick Henry was he started slow. Those first two games, he hadn't really run out of the shotgun before. They had him offset gun, and he had never run out of the gun before. He'd always been in the eye, or back there in the you had the quarterback under center, and you'd run like a single back, whatever. But he'd never done that before. It's different. Like trying to be a running back there out of the gun. It's a little bit different because you got to read that thing a little bit different. It took him a couple of games to get that. Now I think having Lamar back there at quarterback helps him because that you got to spy Lamar, and that helps open it up. Those running lanes for Derrick. I think he could get it. I think he can get 2K again. And I was honestly, I thought he probably could have won the rushing title last year if he got a little bit quicker start. But those first two games, he was just still trying to figure out exactly how you run out of that gun.
Last one from me, Benjamin Allbright, our guest today here on Winning the Division as we wind down here. Ben, give us some, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Give me some predictions for 2025 that you see coming home to roost this year. It doesn't have to be a record. It could be a team that you mentioned Arizona, a team maybe that you like better than other people. Could be a team that a lot of people like that you think is going to be really not so good. Or it could be a player stat, whatever you want it to be. Some bold predictions. Let's say 3 bold predictions for 2025.
Well, I think Arizona can win that division. I really do. I think they're going to be a lot better than people think they are. I think Dallas is going to be a lot better than people think they are. I think Washington takes a little bit of a step back this year. I think they surprised people, caught a few people off guard last year. I think this year people will be better prepared for them. So I think Dallas is going to finish second in the East behind Philly. I think Chicago will be much better under Ben Johnson. They really put work into that offensive line, which was a large part of that. I think I'm not saying Caleb Williams is going to be the next Drew Brees or anything, but I think they'll be a lot better than they were under Eberflus and that cavalcade of offensive coordinators they had. Gosh, I'm trying to think of somebody who could have a big season. Dak Prescott. Brian Schottenheimer is better suited to be a head coach than an OC anyway. He's got that CEO mentality. He's not like an X's and O's guy. He's more of a CEO. I think Dallas is going to surprise some people this year. I think the Colts will be better than people think. I think Colts and Houston will be. Yeah, I think those two will be fighting for the top of that division. I don't put much. Cam Ward, he could be something. I just don't think he's going to be something that quick. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm not a big fan of the coaching staff down there. Brian Callahan, I saw him out here in Denver. I don't know. I'm a big fan of his dad's, but I'm not the biggest Brian Callahan fan. As far as the rest of it goes, man, I don't know. This might be the Bills' year, though. They look hungry, and the way they put stuff together, it might be their year to finally get over the hump. If they don't, they'll blow Sean McDermott out, excuse me, and get somebody in there because I think they've hit kind of the John Fox wall, as I like to call it, right? It's just where you get close, right? You get close, but you can't quite get over that hump. You got to bring somebody in to get you over the finish line, and so that's the thing with Sean McDermott. He certainly changed Buffalo's culture, but I'm not sure he's the guy to get him to the promised land. We'll see. On the NFC side, man, like I said, Arizona, Dallas, I like both them. Tampa's going to be another. They're going to have another good season this year. I'm not sold on Penix there for the Falcons. I didn't see much out of him last year. Maybe I'm off on that, but what I saw at the end there, I didn't see anything that jumped out at me more than he was just a guy. But having a full off season as a starter, who knows? Maybe he'll make me look like an idiot, and I'd be happy for that. So,
do you think that the NFL did the right thing in one not voting out the tush push? Is still in there, and is the tush push essentially the sky hook of football plays?
I'll say this. I am never in favor of banning a play. You got to ban the concept. So if you're, and I'm against players, I would be against the concept of pushing and pulling players into the end zone. So it would fall under that ban, but I am never in favor of just banning a play because you can't stop it. That's stupid. Like, what are we going to do? Okay, these guys found a way to be real good at football, so we're going to ban that. Get out of here. No, you want to shut them up, go stop it. So that's and that's the thing. So I know this sounds like I'm sitting on the fence. I am for banning pushing and pulling ball carriers into the end zone, but I'm against banning a single specific play.
So I'll go here since you just said this. It sounds like you're. We won't hold you to it. It's July. It sounds like you're unofficially saying this could be Buffalo's year in the AFC. Do you have an NFC team that you like specifically, or is Philly going to just do it again?
Well, you got to knock Philly off, but that's the thing. Dallas, Arizona are going to be good football teams. I think Minnesota's going to take a little bit of a step back as they get the rookie in there. I'm not as sold on Green Bay. Detroit, both coordinator turnover there. That's going to lead to some continuity issues. And then out of the South, I don't know if any of those teams match up as well. I mean, I think Tampa's the cream of the crop right now, but we'll see as the season rolls around. So I think it's probably Philly, Dallas, and then Arizona and whoever else comes out of the NFC West that are probably your biggest contenders there.
Benjamin, I'm just gonna listen. I'm gonna make sure. I be trying to tell. I'm here in Atlanta. Yes, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. I be trying to tell Smitty. Okay. Everybody's talking about Carolina and Bryce Young. Bryce Young is the smallest. I don't know who's bigger out of Bryce Young and Kyler Murray. I don't know who's bigger. Kyler might have a couple of pounds on him, but he don't get hurt. Bryce Young does not get hurt. Is Bryce? You mentioned my quarterback. And with the ATL, is he the only quarterback that could potentially help Kyle Pitts look like a freakish tight end? Because at this point, he's had moments. That was his rookie year when he had Matt Ryan. Is Kyle Pitts just what he's shown us, or can he break out of his shell in 2025?
Well, I think they got to use him a little bit better. Kyle doesn't catch the ball or track the ball well over his shoulder. You got to have him flashing the numbers back to the quarterback. So bring him across the field, let him catch the ball, and then use that athleticism to take off. So if they can find ways to do that instead of trying to make him a vertical up the seam guy. I know you want to do that because he's got the speed, but don't do that. Bring him across on the drag, put the ball in his hands, and then let him, because if you got a corner's not going to bring him down, right? And a linebacker's not going to keep up. So try to find ways to get that mismatch and use him a little bit differently than the way they've been using him in my book. As far as Bryce Young and Kyler go, I mean, man, I call them Frodo and Sam because them dudes is hobbits. It's bad when my 5'10" self comes walking in the room and I'm looking down at you. So with all due respect to their talent, which far eclipses my own, anytime I'm walking into a room and I have to look down to interview you as a football player, that's a problem.
Well, I'll leave it there. I wasn't going to say that. Bryce Young in Carolina, they have high expectations here for him in Carolina this year. We'll see what happens there. I taking my fandom out of it, I do think Atlanta and Carolina can potentially challenge Tampa Bay for the division. I don't think it'll be easy by any means, but I think if things go right, Tristan Wirfs news drops. He dropped today. That's very big news for the Bucs starting the season on the PUP list. That's going to be very huge for Baker Mayfield week 1 for sure.
Yeah, it is. That's going to be the thing. I think that division is up for grabs. I think Tampa's at the top, but I think that division's up for grabs unless you're named New Orleans, in which case I think you're just sitting there waiting for next draft. So it don't matter if they wear the black helmets, the white helmets, and none of that's going to raise the point total of that offense.
Benjamin Allbright. I'm Troupe. He's Allbright. My real name is Benjamin. The world knows me as Ben. My family call me Benny. Whenever I get a Benjamin on the show, dropping it. Listen, as you can see, I'm a gem dropper. You dropped about 37 gems, Benjamin, and I will be using it. I mean, I've never heard a quarterback. I've never heard you say a quarterback got to be a counterpuncher to these defensive coordinators. That's one of the best takes I've ever heard, and I will be stealing it from you, sir. No doubt about it.
Hey, imitation is the best form of flattery, and I'll see you at the meeting of the Benjamins. We kicked that Affleck douchebag out, so we'll be one lighter. We'll have one extra seat.
And on that note, that is a great place to end. Benjamin Allbright, our guest today here on Winning the Division. Benjamin, as we get you out the door, where can people find your work? What are you doing? And where can people find you?
850 KOA on the AM signal. We're in like 32 states and like 15 countries or whatever. It's a huge AM signal. And if you know me from Twitter at Allbright NFL, you can unfollow me. It's a dumpster fire. I wouldn't follow me. So you can find me there.
Benjamin Allbright, Broncos Insider KOA. Thank you for coming on Winning the Division, sir. Pleasure having you, and we will talk to you down the road.
Anytime, guys. Anytime.
Appreciate it.
And that was Benjamin Allbright here on Winning the Division. And that's going to wrap up number 52 of Winning the Division. You can rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Keep Pounding Podcast Network, Fans First Sports Network. And if you're still looking for those summer deals, head on to our friends over at 1-800-Flowers.com. Get your flowers, get your decorations, all the tools needed to make your family, whether it's post 4th of July, post Father's Day, or anything else coming up in the fall when it comes to decorations. 1-800-Flowers.com. Our friends over there got everything that you need. Well, that's episode 52 here for Winning the Division. We'll be back next week for our second division preview. We'll have to see what division that is. NFC East is down. That was last week. We've got 7 more to go. We'll do the number 2 division next week here on Winning the Division. For Ben, I'm Ryan Smith, and we will see you guys next time. Remember, here on Winning the Division, you are either winning your division or you are just in your division. That's what our motto here on Winning the Division. We'll see you guys next time.